and always to you are King. Bless and let there be love in our home. The marriage experience ordained by you alone. The marriage experience. Experience ordained by you alone.
Welcome to the Marriage Experience program with Ayokunle and Bosede Santos, where they explore what it means to cultivate a God-centric marriage, delivering realistic and biblical wisdom, pointers and insights from couples and individuals on the marriage journey. Join them today as they continue the conversation around before the marriage covenant. Enjoy.
Hello and welcome to episode 22 of the Marriage Experience program.
Yeah, welcome. Well, we welcome you to today's episode. We're really ramping up, aren't we?
Yes, indeed. And last week we looked at red flags, especially red flags before the marriage covenant is sealed. We talked about the fact that though the signs are seen, some fail to address them. We established that these red flags have the potential to develop into painful and chronic headaches. So the first three red flags we addressed were one, concerns about past history, where one of them may be feeling uncomfortable. Just that we be uncomfortable about a past issue, but have not really addressed these issues.
Or that they may probably even feel
just
like
overlook
they didn't, that their partner didn't really tell them everything about the past.
Yes, and of course this may affect the relationship.
And we also looked at the history of mental or physical abuse, where a previous physical, mental or emotional abuse, or even financial abuse, was either experienced or witnessed by one of the partners. And this, always makes it difficult for the individual to open up. And it could also pose a risk of the person who experienced it to themselves become
potential problem
the potential abusers, whereas they wouldn't even really realize that they are actually perpetrating this abuse. And we also looked at behavioral issues. This is where an unbecoming behavior by a spouse affects the other, like one of the couple always wanting to have their own way or have a tendency to throw tantrums, and it could develop into, a cause of unending friction between the two of them.
Yes, this usually describe people that are referred to as type A personalities. I mean, that's not to say that that's a bad thing.
Absolutely.
But it's just to understand the type of personality, to know how then to handle them, especially in the marriage setting. Okay, so this week we'll be looking at some more red flags. We'll be considering mental health issues. We'll be looking at individual habits, including disorders as well. We'll be looking at sexual predisposition and expectations about the future. So let's have a look at the first red flag this week, and that's mental health issues.
Before you go on, it's important that we mention here that yes, we're on about nurturing Christian marriages, but that still does not remove the fact that individuals have issues. Individuals have challenges that they're facing that they need to work out, either by professional scientific help or clinical help or even spiritual help.
Yeah, so talking about mental health issues, and this is one of the type of challenges, medical challenges that is not generally addressed well worldwide. It's not really just cultural. It's something that, because it's not a physically visual thing, people find it difficult to manage. And of course, there are issues with taboo and all that.
I mean, fortunately, there's a lot of talk about mental health issues these days. So I guess that's bringing it to the fore.
To the fore, as it ought to be.
Yes, and people are now addressing it and facing and addressing it.
Yeah, and of course, these issues may play out as intense behaviors like anger or other mental dispositions like stress, like anxiety, and fretting, and they could deteriorate into violence, if not dealt with properly.
You may wonder that why did we include anger as a mental health issue? It's a psychological thing, right? And so people not knowing how to handle their emotions properly
could then deteriorate
into anger.
Yes. Yeah. So let's take, for instance, one of the pair mishandles their displeasure. Now, this could vary between being irritated to a full-blown out confrontation, which then sees them shouting, resulting to insults, berating their partners, punching holes in the wall,
throwing
things, some kind of tantrum. Yes. Now, this would make anyone fretful and feel unsafe. Absolutely. And in the long run, becomes the cause of potential abuse, cause of unhappiness or even depression. Now, if mental health issues are not addressed and professional help is not sought, the couple will then be heading towards a rough and a very, very rocky marriage.
It's also it bears mentioning here as well that you may feel that, but when they're courting, they're supposed to put on their best behavior.
Yeah.
But then these innate things slip out, once in a while. And if the other partner overlooks it, then it could become something that's a big thing that they're going to have to be nursing,
and
eventually.
Of course, just as you talked about, when one individual overlooks these signs, these red flags, and I think we addressed it last week, where there would always be there would always be something that points towards what we're referring to here, all these signs, but because in most cases, people set out, I want to get married, so that's the goal, and anything that comes to threaten that advancement towards marriage, they excuse it away, give reasons for it, or give excuses for it, but these are things that really need to be taken into consideration.
So now let's look at a few examples of mental health issues. I mean, there's anxiety, there's depression. And so anxiety is a mental health issue which presents as a feeling of powerlessness, where, the person suffering this anxiety has a sense of foreboding or that eerie sense of something bad that's about to happen, That's
just unease.
Yeah, it just makes them, they're just fearful.
On edge all the time.
Fearful about circumstances. And, the symptoms usually begin in early life, and if not attended to, it may continue, for years. Couples shouldn't ignore this, but put a plan in place to handle this through professional help. There's their psychotherapists, their counselors, and we're not undermining the power of prayer, but besides prayer, there maybe there's some chemical imbalance that need to be addressed.
Yes.
It should not be, nothing should, or rather, no stone should be left unturned.
Of course, faith without works is dead.
Absolutely, to address this situation. So there's also depression. Depression is another mental health situation couples shouldn't overlook. Psychologists call it the common cold of psychopathology. And this is one that touches everyone's life. We all get situations where we become unhappy about situations. So depression could span from one end of the spectrum, which could just be a passing mood swing, or and to the other extreme, that is, is self-destructive paranoia. So where unhappiness occurs, for a short term, where because of challenges that people are facing, it's shall we say normal in quotes, but when the feeling of discouragement becomes so draining,
intense and
that it leaves one, experiencing distress over a lifetime, then that needs to be addressed. It needs to be well, shall we say, managed, or it just needs to be taken care of, and not just left to say, oh, it'll pass.
All right, now we look at individual habits. Now, this could degenerate into obsessions, and couples should be prepared for any number of behaviors which may surface when they discuss this issue of individual habits. Now, these habits could range from seemingly harmless ones like crunching their sweets.
I wonder who does that.
I wonder who does that. Yes, indeed, crunching their sweets to share untidiness or very poor hygiene habits. Other habits are like burping annoyingly loudly after their meal. It could also be more serious, like their health or money habits. And then when we have such issues as eating a habit, which in the end become disorders, such as anorexia, bulimia, or binge eating, these are the most common types. So you see habits that, which may start off as just ordinary benign annoying habits, which may then progress or deteriorate, I should say, to these very serious ones. Now, these habits affect not only the health of the individual involved, but their relationships, which then happens to affect them as they come close together. Now, they will erode, these habits will erode the bond between couples, as the recipients of the consequences of these habits will feel helpless and hopeless, not just to help them out to deal with their habits, but also to manage the consequences of the habits.
And even just watching them,
yes.
Just watching them depreciate and watching them lose control of themselves. That way, I don't think it's going to ever be an easy thing for a spouse, to deal with.
To deal with, indeed.
You're listening to the Marriage Experience program with Ayokunle and Bosode Santos.
So we'll now look at the sexual predisposition of couples. One partner may be concerned that the other partner is involved in any number of unsettling sexual tendencies, especially when they are having conversations about what their sex life, would be like. When these red flags show up, as maybe in what one partner is expressing as maybe a fantasy that they've been nursing, or an inclination,
yes.
An inclination that they may have. It's something that if it's something that makes the other person uncomfortable, then they need to address it. They need to address it so that they would both arrive at a comfortable place, where both of them know that, look, this is what they can handle together.
Just like what you talked about as that comfortable place. Now, it's one of the big questions people tend to ask is, you've got someone who is left and the other person is right, and if you meet somewhere in the middle, which is the theoretical place to be, then that means both are uncomfortable because they're not in their comfort zones. That is understood. But the bottom line here is unless you get married to yourself, you'd always have to make compromises. And that's what life is all about. Yeah. So you need to be able to define that new comfortable which will be different from what you're used to, or sorry, of course you're not used to it, but you may not be used to it, but what you desire to this new comfortable, which is what you both develop for yourselves.
Yeah, I mean, sex is supposed to be an activity enjoyed by both of them, and if one of them feels out of sorts with it, then it's not so it's going to be a serious issue
Challenge,
in
yes,
their marriage,
for them to face.
and it will result in trust issues. Trust issues will it will become a point that they
Later
will
on in
need to
marriage.
deal with later on when they get married, especially when they talk. Perhaps they've had past previous partners, sexual partners, and when they talk about their past sexual activities, they may also need to deal with some form of forgiveness. Forgiveness where cases where maybe promiscuity had been engaged in, and pornography is another issue,
and that's a really big one.
Yeah,
yes,
and
today.
that would need to they will need to have accountability measures in place, so that and it's not only men who engage in pornography, women too do it, so whoever has fallen into that, needs to have an accountability measures put in place, so that they are not, they don't keep
them.
falling
Yes.
into that. And so we know that pornography is easily accessible, and it's one of the greatest sex problems in marriages. So it's, if they don't address it and deal with it, it's going to cost them their sex life. They are not going to enjoy a blissful sex life.
Yeah, this is just like anything in life. When, like, you watch a movie, like a romantic movie, and a couple meets, and everything is always fine, and and these movies portray life as
Hallmark movies.
Yes, these movies portray life as full of a bed of roses, but like what I always say, yes, life is a bed of roses, but you also have the thorns. So, but the movies don't actually show you the thorns. So it's the same thing here with pornography. It enhances it shows the roses, but doesn't tell you about the thorns. So it actually makes things a lot worse. Just as you mentioned a few moments ago, and these are one of the things that we really, really need to spend time ensuring that they're addressed, especially before the marriage.
And there are even research evidence that it's pornography is something, it affects the psychology of it affects people psychologically.
That's right.
So it's not something to be trifled with and taken lightly at all.
Yeah.
I'm sure in more episodes we'll still talk about that.
All right. So next we'll look at expectations about the future. Now this is the assumption one spouse has of what their partner will be like once they get married. Now these assumptions may be considerably different from how their spouse is showing up to them right now. The spouses are advertising, like I often say, you look at the advert of a car, the top of the range would be the picture you see, and the bottom of the range would be the cost that you see. So simply put, they plan on changing their partner and making them better than they are at present. And that is a red flag. That is in itself presents a challenge. This is very, very harmful, and it's an unrealistic position that's sure to cause friction between the couple as they get into marriage. Why? This is because the idealistic partner attempts to make the other, like I said a few moments ago, into what they are not.
They already have this
preconceived
this image,
notion,
yes, in their minds of how my husband or how my wife should be, and they're trying to shoehorn them into being like that.
Yeah. So what you want to do is, well, if you have lemons, you make lemonade. You can't attempt to make mango juice if you have lemons, or vice versa. Now it's a bit like a bit like trying to shape wax after it has set.
You can try.
You can try. So what you want to do is to ensure that you're enhancing what tools you have in that person available to you at that time.
Yeah, so we've considered a few of the common red flags, and let's just look at practical ways backed by biblical principles with which we can manage these red flags. Last week, we quoted Proverbs 19, verse 20, which says, "Listen to counsel and receive instruction, that you may be wise in your latter days." And Proverbs 11:14, which says, "Where there is no guidance, the people fall, but in abundance of counselors, there is victory." So where do we get the counsel or instructions from? Who do we get them from?
Yeah, so these are very, very important questions, and I like, what we've talked about. We've talked about all these red flags and how we're now going to start looking at how to manage practical ways. I quoted earlier on that faith without works is dead. So so just as Bossity asked, where do we get the counsel from? Proverbs 19:20 says we should get the counsel. Where do we get it from? Who do we get it from? We've got to be very, very, very careful about the sources that we get this information from. So we'll consider these questions next week. Next week would also be really looking forward to it, because we're going to look at practical ways of dealing with it. As usual, we appreciate your feedback. And if you'd like to send your continue sending your feedback to MXperience@lidiosantos.com. I guess by now you know the full email address. We're also on YouTube. Our handle is @Mixperience without the E, Mixperience. We are, of course, also on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Amazon Music, and everywhere you listen to your podcast. So thank you very much for your time this evening.
It's always a delight.
It is always a delight. And like I said, I think it was last week that this is the highlight of our week. Being able to share these things with you, and also learning ourselves, because when we put this thing together, whatever research we do, when we dig into our own past history, we also learn a lot from it.
To be honest with you, it's been challenging, because then it's really stretching us and taking us to new dimensions, even in our own marriage.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, so thank you very much, and do have a wonderful week.
God bless you. Bye for now.
Join Ayokunle and Bossade again next week on The Marriage Experience as they bring God's truth to help you build your marriage God's way. Till then, remember, marriage is God's idea, and it is a good
The
thing.
marriage experience ordained by you alone.